Welcome to a second episode of this new feature that I'm calling Spotlight MAME, and in this one I want to look at something that will be in the upcoming MAME 0.125 release, and that is Taito's Super Dead Heat. The emulation of this was provided by Phil Bennett. Let me just fire it up now. And as you can already see from down there, this is a 4-screen game, and is in fact the first 4-screen game to be emulated in MAME, because such things were very uncommon. I can only think of one other, and I was working on the emulation of that a while back, and that still hasn't been submitted. So yeah, this is something of a landmark for that reason. Anyway, it was actually worked on at Taito by the late Fukio Mitsuji, who would later go on to do Bubble Bobble, Rainbow Islands, and the Game Gear title Magical Puzzle Pop-Hills. Now, when you consider this was released in 1985, that is a year before Atari's Super Sprint. So this is really the first full-colour overhead racer of this style, the first 16-bit racer of this style, and it just seems to have been forgotten until recently, and for some reason, possibly due to the massive cabinet size, is incredibly rare. The version dumped is the one with the English speech ROM, so it'll be in English when I'm playing it. There's a Japanese version that may or may not be added sometime soon. But yeah, this is a big step up from Taito's previous effort, which was Pit and Run. There's power-ups, there's a full car rollabout. There's lots going on in this. Anyway, I think I'll just give it a play. That's probably the best way to demonstrate it. So here we go. I've flipped the screen around, so the players 3 and 4 are at the bottom now, and I'm playing as player 3, the blue car. So let's see how this goes. You can see the little shifter display in the bottom. I start in low gear. You can actually play most of the game in low gear. High gear is much more difficult to control. So yeah, Phil Bennett did work on the emulation of this. I provided a few refinements like the shifter view, but that's minor. Yeah, we race around the track. So here we go. So here we go. Can I take first? Did I take first? Yep, got first place there. I think it just gives you more points. So the gimmick of this. Sorry, I'll talk about that. You get a shop system. Again, this is probably the first time you've seen a shop system in a racing game like this. The race after which it appears is determined by a dip switch, and it only appears once. But you can get a permanent upgrade for your car, as opposed to the ones you collect around the track that you lose as soon as you crash. Now, the gimmick, which you may have already seen, is that each player gets to select from one of 4 parts for the race course. This means that for every level, every stage, there are actually 256 possible track layouts, because the computer cars will each pick one of the random 4 pieces, as will I, which does add a lot of variety to the game. So there's the S, which I'd already got anyway, because that's the suspension. So you can't pick up powers you've already got. If you noticed me bashing through the walls a little bit, you can use that to your advantage on some stages and make shortcuts. But it's not always the best idea. Third that time. So again, I select a relatively easy course piece. I'd probably stand a better chance, although the AI do struggle with some of the trickier ones too, so it balances out. You'll notice there's an extra AI car in this level. Oop, lost control. And there's these hazards this time. Again, I think that's a first. I could have done with that power up. The P power up's just points, but the T one is the turbo. There we go. Gives me a bit of extra speed. There's always the timer counting down, and if the timer runs out, it is actually just game over. There are no continues here. You got the engine? Yep, I got the engine. And I get to keep these power-ups until I have a fatal crash, for example, falling in the water. So now I've got 3 of the 4 power-ups, and if you can hold on to them, it's really essential from the later levels. So we've got an ice stage. Let's go with that piece. There's a different little bit of music for each stage, which adds to the variety. This track's got the tyres as a hazard, and if you hit those, they will go everywhere. And somebody usually does. There we go, somebody has done. And already got that power. Oh dear. If you got the turbo and you go at full speed, it actually always spins you out. I don't know why. I did also make a few minor sprite fixes to the emulation here, but that's just when you hit one of the edges of the screen. It's nothing major. So this is where it really starts to get quite tricky, because none of these pieces are that easy. Yeah. I crashed into the water, and that's my power-up's gone, apart from the one I picked after the first race. That might be this over for me. We'll see if I can recover, but the timer is quite strict at this point. Oh dear. Oh. No, I think I'm done for. The timeout sound is playing, and I've still got 2 laps to go. Yeah, that's it. Game over. One thing with this is you don't get to enter your name in the high score table unless you finish all the races, which, considering how many high score entries there are, is surprising, but that's just how this one is designed. Anyway, that was playing as player 3. One thing I did add is the multiple views, so we can switch it back to the normal side, which puts player 1 and 2 the right way up. And if I just redefine the controls a little bit, let's get rid of that, redefine that, we can have a go as coins. We can have a go as player 1, which is one of the one that starts on the same position as the finish line. That monitor, because each player had their own monitor. So again, it was a very big cabinet, this one. You can see how this was influenced by Atari's earlier Sprint series, but Taito definitely went all out here to make something a lot more impressive. It's just a shame that it's been forgotten about for so long. Again, the dip switch is set so that I choose this after the first race. The suspension again, because it just makes it easy to control. Back, I'll go with that piece. Now, this has been on my list of things I wanted to see emulated for a long time, because it's one I strangely have memories of playing, or not playing as such, but seeing when I was very young. And it's memorable because of the four cabinet set, the four screen setup. I could barely see the screens at the time, so I was not very old. But everybody used to say, "Oh, it's probably Hot Rod, Sega's multiplayer overhead racer," but it wasn't. I remember there being 4 steering wheels around the cabinet and the 4 screens, but I can't for the life of me remember where that was. I think this actual board was sourced in Argentina, so if there are any in the UK, it would be the one I remember, but I don't know how this ended up in Argentina, if it was a test there or somebody imported it, but that's where this one was. I can only assume this must have just been too expensive to produce in any great numbers, or too close to the release of Super Sprint, which is a more impressive looking game. Because while you've got the 4 screens here, the resolution of each is about 256 pixels wide, because it's a standard monitor and low resolution board output. While Super Sprint, the Atari game, used a medium resolution monitor and had naturally higher horizontal and vertical resolution from that board. So the resolution difference overall is only very slight, even when this has got 4 screens. It might just have been a case of bad timing, even if this is really the game that should be remembered. And it plays well. It is tough. I have managed to get to the last track once without any cheats. But this is with the dip switch is set to easy, which gives you the most time. There's another one that means the computer cars lose their power-ups between stages, but your main opposition is really the clock, not the computer cars, unless they do that. Yeah, it's a good game. It's one of the most interesting titles I think has been added in terms of support for a good year or so. At least in terms of arcade games. Obviously, I'm finding a lot of the plug and play work fascinating, which is why I've involved myself in it more. But a lot of the other arcades that have shown it recently, you can see why they're there. This one, it doesn't make much sense. This could be reissued quite easily on modern platforms as a 4-player game for 4 players on one console. I'm not sure what the reception would be to the gaps in the screen, but oh dear, not driving really. P is just points, and that's me done for. Yeah. Not enough time here. It would definitely helped if there was some kind of time power up too, but nope, it just wants to throw you off the machine. I'm not having my best set of games here. But yeah, that is Super Dead Heat from Taito. So let's just close that. And okay. Again, if you like this content, please hit subscribe. And again, thanks to Phil Bennett for emulating that one. It will be in the MAME 0.215 release, which should be later today or tomorrow.